So good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you are in the world or when you are listening to this. Welcome to this program sponsored by the International Association for Peace and Economic Development, which is one of the primary associations of the Universal Peace Federation. So UPF is an NGO in general consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations, and was founded by Reverend and Mrs. Sun Myung Moon in 2005. So my name is Roger Wetherell, and I'm the U.S. coordinator for IAED, and I'm going to be the moderator for the program today. And in today's webinar, we're going to be looking again at North Korea. And we haven't done that in a while in this program, but I think this is a very good time to do it, given the changes that have happened in North Korea over the last year, and also the change in the US government and the possibilities for what might open up in the coming 4 years with a new president. So financial issues have plagued North Korea in 2024. So Kim Jong-un's success in halting inflation over the previous 10 years have suddenly come undone. So there's been a debasement of the Korean won, and in the last part of this year, the Korean won has gone from 8,000 won to the US dollar to over 27,000 won to the US dollar, which is the equivalent of like a two-thirds loss of value. And we're very privileged today to have North Korean economic expert, Mr. Bill Brown, who monitors the situation in North Korea very closely, who's going to be able to talk about this. So our presenter, Bill, is the chair of the George Washington University's North Korean Economic Forum in the Institute of Korean Studies, and is also an adjunct professor at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, where he teaches occasional courses there. And he previously served on the board of directors of the Korean Economic Institute, but retired from that last year. And Bill, I believe, is now an emeritus of that organization and has graduated, I would say. So he previously worked in government service as a senior advisor to the National Intelligence Manager for East Asia. And he worked with the CIA, the Commerce Department, the National Intelligence Council, and is very well known amongst North Korean watchers throughout the world. So, Bill, I'd like to introduce you and have you give your presentation, and we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. So please put your questions in the chat as we go through this, and we'll get to them at the end of the program. Take it away, Bill.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Roger. And please, I've got a little paper here that it's a draft paper that'll be published, I think probably the end of the week, in the Korea Economic Institute Peninsula blog. So you can look forward to that. KEIA.org in the Peninsula blog. I think they'll probably kind of highlight it. But it's still a draft, so I don't want to give it to you yet. In other words, the editors have not gotten their hold of it yet. I do really like talking about North Korean economy. I work on South Korea, China as well, but North Korea is so intriguing. It really is. And it's a little bit dangerous because it's easy for me to say whatever I want, and not many people can challenge me. I can just throw out another fact, or what I think is a fact. So it's kind of dangerous in that respect. There's not a lot of people who follow North Korea economy that closely. There's a lot of people that follow it from a military, strategic, political, diplomatic kind of perspective, especially here in Washington. Maybe there are too many such people. But there are not many of us who follow the economy, and even fewer who look at North Korean finance or economic finance. And that's kind of the little niche that I like to follow, mainly because since I used to have a lot of clearances, but I haven't for some time. It's one of the few areas that you can get unclassified information on that looks pretty solid, and that's what I tend to work on a lot. Now, what we've been, it's a very interesting time right now because, like, I think today or yesterday, President Trump said something about North Korea having nukes. Well, we've all known they've had nukes for some time, but we haven't officially declared them a nuclear power. That connotes some other strategic issues that I don't want to get into here. But it is kind of an interesting thing that he said it is kind of a nuclear power. So that'll catch a lot of attention, especially in South Korea and in Japan, that have sort of argued. People will argue that if North Korea is a nuclear power, why aren't they also? So a lot of issues spring from that, and we can talk about them later. But I think the main takeaway I want y'all to have from what I'm going to say today is that a lot of people, a lot of my friends and analysts here working on North Korea are presenting North Korea right now, Kim Jong-un, as kind of at a high spot, as a very on top of the world kind of person. And they're doing that by looking at his military, especially the nuclear issue. In the last 4 years, they've been producing highly enriched uranium, kind of a lot of it probably, a little bit of plutonium, and therefore any number of nuclear weapons. I think there's a lot of speculation on how many, but there's pretty good idea that they have nuclear weapons. They haven't really showed yet that they can shoot them in a missile, even an ICBM, all the way to here, but they haven't yet shown that they can download the missile, download the warhead onto a target, which is harder to do than you might think. After all, the missile ICBM goes 20, 30,000 miles up in space and then comes down really fast and gets really hot. And so that delivery part of the weapon is critical, and they haven't shown that they can do that. I think most people believe that they can, but they haven't sort of proven it yet. And then all this talk with North Korea sending troops, what did they say, 13,000 troops into Ukraine, fighting for the Russians in Ukraine, and presumably getting paid something for that, and a lot of North Korean military equipment, well, especially missiles, shorter range missiles that they've been using against Ukraine, and presumably been earning money from that. I don't know that they've been earning money, cash. It could be more of a barter deal. I just don't know. I don't think anybody on the West knows that yet. North Korea badly needs advanced defense equipment, especially radar. South Korea has all these F-35s coming in constantly, and F-35. I'm not a military expert, but I think it can just fly right over North Korea, and the North Koreans wouldn't even see it because it's very stealthy. So they need better radar to see this. They need a lot of expensive weaponry. Are they bartering their troops, some dead ones, for this equipment? I don't know. I don't think we know that yet. But anyway, the talk around town here is 38 North. Friends of mine have written an article on how strong Kim Jong-un is right now compared to 6 years ago when he met Trump the first two times. And the argument is that he will be able to kind of negotiate with Trump from a position of strength. At least that's the way these articles are presenting themselves. I stand back a little bit, and I'm always a contrarian. I think economists tend to be contrarian. So if somebody throws out an argument, I tend to, what's wrong with that? So what I think is wrong with that is people here in the West are not looking enough at North Korea's economy, and especially North Korean finance. As Alan mentioned, about 2015, 10 years ago, Kim Jong-un gave a speech in which he promised his people, what he called the functionaries, the bureaucrats who work their monetary system, the banks, all the banks, he promised them promised to the people through them that he would build up a better money and banking system, that their money would be safe at the banks, so that they're trying to induce people to put their savings into the banking system like anywhere else. That's tricky, tough for North Korea because, they come from this socialist background where they tried basically to get rid of money. And for a long time in this Kim Jong-un's grandfather's era, Kim Il-sung's era, they pretty much did that. They pretty much got rid of money. People were paid basically by rations, and a sort of a socialist system where your workplace would give you a ration for 10 days at a time, usually I think 3 times a month for your food. And then the food was virtually free. You were given it. Same with your housing, your education, your medicine, everything is sort of parlayed through your workplace, whether it's a government or sort of a state enterprise or a farm, big farm, collective farm. They'd all get to what they, the idea was they'd all get what they needed through that system, and they didn't need money. They had money and they used money, but the cost of everything was tiny compared to that. The real, what they really needed was the ration ticket. It's kind of like what you might give your kid. You might give your kid a little bit of a little allowance, right? And they could use it. But the main thing you give your kid is your housing and your food, and hopefully your love, and you're taking care of the person, little kid. It's a very patronizing kind of system. That all came apart with their Great Famine because that system didn't contribute to productivity. People would get paid pretty much the same. Savings weren't worth anything. You didn't have any savings, right? So if you ran out of food, if your office, your company ran out of food, what do? Everybody started trading and using the little bits of yuan that they had. Pretty quickly, that yuan skyrocketed. The value fell and in hyperinflation. So in Kim Il-sung's day and in Kim Jong-un's father's day, the money system just fell apart completely. And prices just started soaring. They started using money, though, after the famine. And since the money devalued so quickly, people started using US dollars and Chinese yuan as their money. And that's been the system ever since. It's a very odd sort of dollarized, partially dollarized economy. Not many economies will allow their people to use foreign currency, but in North Korea, they can't help it. So everybody uses dollars, everybody uses RMB, Chinese money, everybody uses yuan. Kim did a good job, though, of then protecting the yuan for 10 years. How did he do that? In other words, he protected it from inflation. And the yuan held its value at about 8,000 yuan per dollar for almost 10 years. Very stable currency, and prices were stable. So how did he do that? Well, in theory, it's not hard to do. In practice, it's very hard to do. In theory, what you do is you don't print more money, right? You don't allow more yuan credit. You strangle the economy so it's not spending, so the demand does not rise and prices don't rise. It's like an extremely tight monetary policy. Conservatives here in America would love it in a way because it protects the value of the money. The problem for them, though, what is the problem? The problem is it starves the state of money. And the state can't borrow money, the state can't invest money. A huge divide then developed between the wages of state workers, which is about half the country, and the private sector workers, who are all their wives typically, who are working in the marketplace. And the marketplace earnings were like 10 times more than the state earnings. Well, that can't go on forever. And I've been arguing for years now that the state has needed to really raise state wages by 10 times or more. Well, suddenly it seems like earlier, about a year ago, um, there's some articles. It's not quite proven yet, I don't think, but there's articles by defectors, by defector reporting, and others that suddenly the state allowed a huge increase in state wages. For example, teachers, they're all state workers. They got a 10 times increase. Well, that sounds like a big increase, but it's kind of like 10 times nothing is still nothing, right? 10 times one is just 10. It was a big increase, but not compared to the private sector. So what happened? Beginning in about July, um, uh, Alan, you want to show can you show the graphic on the rice price? So this is the price of rice. And, rice is their main staple food, rice and corn. And corn does virtually the same thing, but I just do rice right here. See, for years, that's what I mean, from 2015 up until middle of last year, it was fairly stable, at about 5,001 per kilogram. Suddenly in July, the price of rice soars. It almost doubled up to 9,001 by early this year, just a week or two ago. Now, in the last week or two, it has dropped just a little bit. So it's like 8,400 won per kilogram. This data is pretty solid. It comes from reporting agency in Japan called Asia Press, which calls in. They have people in North Korea. They call them, what's the price? Price of rice is kind of a hard thing to hide. And so they get that information. But what I'm very pleased with, there's another organization in South Korea called Daily NK that does the same thing. So we have two different sources for the same thing. That makes you feel much more comfortable with your data. And they don't match exactly, but the trends are very close. I think Daily NK has the price a little bit, it has like 8,000 won instead of 8,400. That's just very close. So, but now think what this has done in North Korea. The price of their main food has gone up about 80% just since summer. Now, so this is what I'm thinking. If Kim Jong is in such a power position, meeting with Trump, well, I think he's probably got to look at the price of rice. He gave and there's another issue for the won, North Korean won. Let's look at the won graphic quickly here too, the next graphic. So this is won per dollar. In other words, a rise means a rise in the dollar, right? Not in the won. So this is what I meant. For years, it was like 8,000 won. And then in the same time, in July, boom, it skyrockets to nearly to 28,000. And again, it's dropped a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but still, a third of what it was worth. Gone from 8,000. So a dollar is worth 3 times what it was just less than a year ago. This is hugely inflationary, and it's so contrary to what Kim promised back in 2015 when he told his people, we're not going to devalue the won anymore. We're not going to have inflation. So that policy that he argued 10 years ago, it's got to be creating a lot of tension in Pyongyang right now. Okay, that's good for that graphic. in um, they always give Kim always gives a speech at the end of the year, sort of a State of the Union speech, and he did that to his Central Committee, the party, the Workers' Party, in I think December 27th or 28th, something like that. And that's all reported by their newspapers. And you can read it, I read it, and they translate it, and you can translate it with Google now. It's easy. But there's long speeches, you go through them, they're kind of boring. Usually he focuses on the economy. This year he does, but there's an extra dimension, and he talks less about the economy and more toward what he calls this dangerous international situation that's enveloped the whole region. And he doesn't talk about Russia very much, almost nothing about China. It's all just this regional hazardous situation. He talks about the economy in terms of their 5-year plan. Their 5-year plan ends this year, 2025. So he goes through, he says, where we're making progress, we've hit our targets for this year, for 2024, we've met our targets. And interestingly, they don't give figures of how much they produce. They just say, well, we met our target, or we exceeded our target by X amount. And most of them are like 10, 20% for their main top products. Interestingly, though, on electricity, which is their main shortage, I think, it says, well, we met our target by 1%. Oh, that's not so great. And then he says, our economy is growing kind of on trend, doesn't give a number. So it's not a really optimistic speech in terms of the economy. And you could argue it's even kind of depressing because he doesn't talk about a lot of new big projects. He mentions a couple of investment projects, but they're kind of, small ones. He talks a lot about a lot of housing, but 25,000 housing units in a population of 22 million, that's not really that much. And a lot of talk about how poorly these are being built now, thrown together. So the economics arguments the facts that he's presenting are not that great. And then he's usually pretty good about saying what the problems are. And he says this last year, 2024, the problems were our calamity, our floods, our Yalu River floods. And there was all those pictures of him going up, floating in a boat, helping people get with and all this housing is helping with the reconstruction from the flooding. So he says their big challenge is natural disasters. Well, okay, they always have natural disasters, but it's not really very looking forward to a lot of progress. At least that's the way I read it. He does mention, though, in passing. So, I mean, the thing about the price of rice and the price of dollar, everybody knows that, right? You can't hide that from the population. But he doesn't mention inflation. He has one sentence that's pretty interesting. He says, we need to focus on our system. We need to better manage our system and our prices. That's the only thing he says. We need to better manage our price system. Now I can be optimistic that he wants to go back to trying to claim a stronger one. I'm one who thinks they really badly need a decent money system. That would go a long way toward solving a lot of their problems. But they've never been able to do that. He got close last year, I think, to 8 years of stability, but now it's kind of blown up on him. I'm thinking that's a huge domestic crisis for Kim Jong-un, one that he doesn't really address in his speech. There's some good parts to it. They've raised wages for state. That's what I'm saying they've been needing to do for a long time. Well, what does that do? That blows up their budget, right? Just like anywhere else. And it breeds inflation. Well, the inflation catches on like a fire and devastates the state wages. So they need to do it again and again and again. It creates hyperinflation. So now he's got a huge problem of getting control of the money that he's let loose. Um, it's a really interesting problem because not many countries have a foreign currency circulating like they do US dollars there and Chinese money. So their money competes in everybody's wallets with dollars and yuan. It's done that well for 10 years. Now it's sort of not. So bottom line, we can go talk more issues, but bottom line for my little presentation here is Kim has a lot of really difficult issues, domestic issues that he has to deal with. And so if we're just looking at missiles being shot out in the East Sea, Sea of Japan or East Sea, whatever you want to call it, or these sad cases of these troops dying in Ukraine for what purpose? Who knows? That information is probably not very available inside North Korea, but you can pretty much imagine that, pretty much guess that that will start seeping through. That, oh, our soldiers, our boys are dying in Ukraine. Why are they doing that? Ukraine helped us in the Korean War. They built all these buildings. Why are we fighting Ukraine? I would imagine there's there's a big Ukraine embassy right there, Pyongyang Railroad Station. Why are we fighting Ukraine? Why are we dying there? So I'm thinking there's a lot of tension inside Pyongyang right now. We can look at what our government. Well, another thing that's to his advantage, I suppose, is all this just unrest in South Korea and sort of political turmoil here in America. So he can sort of be arguing, well, we have our troubles, but look at South Korea. They put their president in jail. Look at America. They just tossed out another president, bringing back another one. So we're not such in bad shape. But that's not going to go anywhere for the price of rice. The North Korean people could care less about anything like that. They want to know where their food is coming from. So does that offer some opportunities for us in dealing with North Korea? Maybe, might. I think if we do it smartly, we can engage them in a way that's helpful to them, helpful to us. But it has to be done very smartly. In the past, I think we've not been very smart about doing that. So let me end there, and we have a discussion. Alan might want to ask questions, so some of the rest of you might. Hopefully you join in.
Thank you very much, Bill. That's, I think, very enlightening. Many of us don't get to get that inside look into what's going on in North Korea. And just wanted to encourage people, if you have further questions about anything to do with the North Korean economy, not just this inflation issue, or if you want to ask about, Bill's perspective on where we should be going in terms of policy towards North Korea in the coming year, then please put them in the chat and we'll get to them. I had a couple of questions to start off with, though. So, Bill, looking at those figures, it looks like, this hockey stick inflation it may have leveled off a little bit, but it reminds me very much of kind of what happened after World War One with Germany, where there was this huge inflation and people ended up having to print. There was huge amounts of money printed and put into the economy. Is the Korean government actually printing money, do you know, or to take care of this? And if they are they creating higher denominations of bills? Because this is what happened in Germany, is they had to, print, million Deutschmark bills in order for people to actually exchange goods and services.
Yeah, my dad grew up in China, and the same thing happened in China, and right before the communists took over. boatloads, cartloads of money, paper money.
Right.
It's interesting. North Korea, their biggest denomination is no is 5,000 won, which at what is it, 23,000 won per dollar is worth about less than a quarter, right? The biggest denomination is worth about 20 cents, and it won't buy a cup of coffee. The biggest denomination will, so it's kind of worthless. Paper
Mm.
is worthless. Um, but technology is interesting. Technology gets everywhere, right? Technology is so cheap. Smartphones are so cheap everywhere now. North Korea, they all have smartphones. They don't work as well as ours, I don't think, but they work pretty well. And more, they're using electronic money.
Mm.
So it's won denominated. So you go to the bank and you put your won in the bank, it's like a debit card, not a credit card. It's important difference. We don't pay much difference. I don't pay much difference credit card and debit card. You use them willy-nilly because I have credit. If you don't have credit, North Korea is still a communist country, and credit is looked down upon. So, but they do use electronic money where it's easy just to expand the money base without printing more of it. You know what I mean? So they can still take it away from you. They can close the bank,
Mm.
but I think that's what's happening there.
So
Uh,
they're not taking around wheelbarrows full of
no,
money to pay for their sack of
no, they're
rice,
taking
right?
it on their phone just like you are.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
it's pretty amazing. Now,
Okay.
one thing about the phone money, it's not phone money, but the money on in the it's they're very good at a lot of them are very good at hacking, as we've learned. Um, and I suspect they're finding all kinds of ways to move that money from won into RMB, maybe even into dollars through a Chinese account.
Mm.
So if you can get a Chinese account, you can trade it. That may be what's happening to the exchange rate. People are cashing in their won for Chinese yuan,
Okay.
and that's dropping the won, raising the yuan or raising the dollar. I suspect
Which
that's what's happening.
brings me to another point. Is the numbers that you quoted here on the exchange rate, are they the official exchange rate or the unofficial black market?
That's another great question because the official rate for years and years, yeah, it used to be 2.13, like February 13th, Kim Il-sung's birthday, something. No, April, it's their tax day, April 15th. So, but the 415, that was their exchange rate. Is a meaningless. The official rate was totally meaningless. And it's been down there very meaningless for a long time, meaning except for if you're an official. So if you're a Korean government, South Korean government going there, you have to pay the official rate, which is ridiculous. A lot of our NGOs, a lot of people going in there would pay the really ridiculous official rate. Now, in last year, one important thing happened, very important thing happened. They announced, Norong Shinmun, their newspaper announced in a speech that the official rate was now 8,000 won. So they moved it up to where the market rate had been for like 8 years. Very important measure. But then it goes from 8,000 to 27,000, now 22,000.
Mm.
So already the official rate is way undervalued,
I
way
see.
overvalued rather.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions here from the chat. One is about earning foreign currency. So what can North Korea actually trade in order to earn foreign currency? And the second one is kind of related. Do you think that they're going to be opening up more to foreign tourists coming in the coming year?
Yeah, the I didn't really mention the sanctions, the UN sanctions on North Korea. They've really damaged their ability to export, especially to China. China has always been the last 30 years, been their largest trading partner. Um, but China joined in with the UN sanctions in 2017, really harshly, and pretty much stopped North Korea's exports of coal and minerals and iron, all kinds of things. The sanctions hit North Korean exports more than they hit North Korean imports. But then the coronavirus hit, and China and North Korea, they both closed their borders, so there was almost no trade. Now, 2 years ago, they started gradually opening trade, and now North Korea, but like everybody with China, you tend to import a lot more than you export. So North Korea has been importing a lot of stuff from China in the last year. It's almost rebounded to where it was before the pandemic. What they import are consumer products, like everybody else, and they fled into the markets, and they vitalize the markets. They're very helpful, and they help consumption, sugar or whatever things people want. They bring in from China. They don't produce enough of it themselves. The problem for them is exports. And the Chinese have, there's a lot of smuggling going on, and so the data is kind of suspect. But the data shows a tremendous North Korean trade deficit. That was sort of surprising for a long time. How could they have this huge trade deficit and keep the exchange rate steady? Well, that's why I argue they were just being very parsimonious about printing money and giving credit. So they're starving their own state. Now, though, those imports from China have continued. The exports have risen a tiny bit, but not much. So this is where North Korea's Kim Jong-un can be really faulted for not promoting exports. And what your question is a great one. What do they have to export? Everybody has something to export. North Korea has great ability to export, especially non-ferrous metals, especially rare earths, especially zinc. You know what the demand for zinc right now in all these batteries is tremendous. The price is very high. North Korea has maybe the second or third largest zinc reserves in the world. And it used to be a big exporter of zinc. Why they're not exporting zinc? They are sanctioned. They're not supposed to. But why aren't Chinese companies secretly importing zinc? I don't know. They should, so that what they have to export is these non-ferrous zinc and lead, different kind of rare earths. They're not really rare, but North Korea can process them. What they are doing a bit of is assembling. They were doing pretty well with importing watch pieces, the chips for an electronic watch, and packaging them, putting them together, and selling them as a watch back to China. That was doing pretty well before the pandemic, but it hasn't really come back. What they're doing a fair amount of is hair pieces, wigs, and all kinds of mustaches and things like that. It's really funny because this was South Korea's biggest back in 1961 or two, when I was there as a little boy. That was their biggest first venture into exporting. South Korea was
Interesting.
hair products. Now North Korea is doing the same thing to China, and they're making some money on it. So that kind of assembly, and that part is not sanctioned. So there's room for them to do a lot more of that. Footwear. Why aren't they producing footwear? Probably they need they need Nike or somebody to come in and help them get the brand, and do that. Then they could do that. But they could be a very strong exporter if they put their mind to it.
Yeah, I think the path that many countries follow is going through clothing first, right? Clothing,
Yes.
shoes. This is kind of where South Korea got started, and then it was China, and then it moved to Vietnam and various other places, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of potential
A
because,
lot of potential but the socialist system doesn't reward exports.
right,
It's sort of internalized. They want to be self-reliant. They want to do everything themselves.
yeah.
So they do a lot of textiles for themselves, but they're poor quality. Nobody else wants their textiles.
So a couple of other things. So uh, there's a lot of news been coming out recently around cryptocurrency theft
Mhm.
and that's coming from North Korea. So North Koreans hacking into various Bitcoin accounts and so on and stealing cryptocurrency. Are they able to actually convert that into money, into, US dollars or to trade with?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of everybody's biggest question. And I don't really have a good answer to that because I mean, I sort of understand the cryptocurrency, but um, clearly, they're making some North Koreans are making a lot of money from that. And we say it's stealing it. And I think they are stealing it, hacking. Um, a lot of this is being done from Chinese. You sort of have to have a safe place to do it from, and that would be North Korea. But their connectivity is not so great in North Korea, and outside agencies can tell that they can tell where it's coming from. So if it's inside North Korea, it's not so good for them. So they do it from, I think, largely from China, no doubt. Um, but you know what they're stealing? They're stealing money from Chinese banks, right? Chinese companies, Chinese people. Yeah, some Americans, the Sony deal a while back, um, and but this is quite illegal everywhere. Even in North Korea, they would be stealing North Korean money, right? Hacking into other people's accounts. Now the government sort of sponsors it or allows it. That's the criminality of their government.
Hmm.
But it's got to be very risky for them to be stealing money from the Bank of China, right? Maybe that's why the Chinese are not so helpful to them right now, right? In other words, a lot of people everywhere in the world should be jumping on them for stealing. And I think probably not enough goes on that way. It's really the same for the nukes, you know. If they can nuke uh, South Korea, they can nuke China. They can nuke
Hmm.
Japan. They can nuke, if they can nuke New York, they can nuke anywhere in the world, right? So
Mm.
everybody in the world should be jumping on them for these missiles, these ICBM missiles. Same with the hacking.
Mm.
Now, one thing I think is my guess, it's sort of a learned guess, I guess, is that the hacking, the numbers that pop up, is kind of like insurance. You know, the money is you you know, you put the highest value on my house caught on fire. You put I may probably made some money on it because you put high value, maybe overvalued your old stuff, right?
Mm.
Well, I think it's kind of inflated that way because, as you say, once you get into that realm of cyber currency, you have to get it back into dollars to spend it, or hard currency to spend it. And that process of coming back, it's like you lose a 20, 30, 40% of it because you have to pay everybody off. And I think even the process of the hackers, here's people in China hacking, doing young guys, probably young, stealing account. You know, they got how can they be managed? No, I suspect they're not very well managed, and they're making
Mm.
money on their own. So
I see.
I don't. I'm sure they do it a lot, and I'm sure that's an income for the country. How much the state gets of that, I don't have much of an idea.
Okay. So getting back to the devaluation of the won here, um, because the won is worth so little, how does the economy actually function with people? So if you're only getting paid, 40,000 won a month, how does a person live on that?
Well, the person, so 40,000. So the problem has been that it's not been 40,000, it's been about 4,000. That's been about the state wage,
Which is
which
like
is
20
nothing,
cents, right?
which is nothing. But along with that, it's like you're in the military. You know, you get your food, you get your tent, you get your uniform, you get all the stuff free. And what you get paid in not in our military, but in South Korean military or a lot of conscript militaries, you get paid a little lunch money, and you can go do that with. So you think that's your salary, but it's not really. Your salary is really all that comes with it. So when we talk about even a 40,000 won person, he or she is getting a lot of perks. Almost always they have free apartments, for example. Now it's kind of worth what you pay for, right? It's a pretty
Mm.
terrible apartment, and they don't fix it, and the heating is not existent. The water, it's just terrible. But it is obviously they live off of it. They're not dying. There's no, but I don't think there's much starvation going on right now in North Korea. They're at a above subsistent level incomes.
So you don't think that this is going to lead to some kind of famine again, or any kind of a crisis in that respect, humanitarian wise?
I think the crisis comes with money. I mean, most of us, we love money. We love the money system because it
Mm.
contributes to productivity, to savings. It does a lot of right things. Makes you be careful how you spend money. Don't waste it. And you want to invest and make more money. So you want to invest in good things that are productive, not stupid things like yet another steel mill that they don't need. Um, the So it does a lot of the right things. The one thing it does very poorly, as we all notice, it's a divider. Some people make money and some people spend money. You know? If you spend more than you make, you're borrowing. And even if it's a socialist economy, you don't borrow from the bank, you borrow from your neighbor, you borrow from your mother, you borrow from, you're borrowing money. And the lender wants you to pay back, and the lender can get very tough on you if you don't pay it back,
Mm.
even if it's your brother, right?
Sure.
And the interest rates can be really, really high in effect. So the what I'm thinking is happening is and even for the state people, they're if they're really loyal to the state, they're working their job, they're getting 4,000 now, maybe 10,000 won. They can't feed their kids. So what are they doing? They're doing extra work. A doctor is in the state system, doesn't get paid much. So what does he do? He sells medicine at an extremely high market rate.
Mm.
And if you're in the marketplace, you'll pay that high rate. So, well, it's illegal like everywhere, but and the policeman, everybody, the system, Korea is a very civilized country. It's been around for thousands of years. It has a very civilized, maybe not uh, on our standards, it's a different kind of standard, but a very civilized, orderly kind of place. You can see all the order that they have there. I'm thinking what is happening now is it's disorder because people are being paid so differently. And
Mm,
that's bound
interesting.
to create huge tensions.
So
Maybe
there's
not
a
starvation. It's a different kind of issue I think they face now than they faced
so there's a
20.
lot of kind of bribery and things going on, and payments under the table to get things done, right?
Yeah, that's what
I'd
I'm
like to
thinking.
invite my colleague Alan Jessen to come on for a second, and he has a question for you as well. Go ahead.
Yes. Oh, hi, Bill. Okay.
Hey, yeah, hi, Al.
As you can put up that book for a second, Roger. I have a
Yep.
question that really I'm bringing out to you from this book by Myung Kim. I think you know him and have met with him before, but he's an economist with the Seoul National University, and he's made a detailed study. This book is of socialist economies that inevitably either collapse or find it necessary to transition to a more market-based economy, one that would be integrated. So in this book, 2017, he states that time is not on Kim Jong-un's side. He says that the centrally planned socialist system has virtually collapsed, and with the development of the informal market system that you were just referring to there, and the underdeveloped banking system or the unstable banking system, and then widespread bribery and corruption, which we've noted here, that the North Korean economy, as in the Soviet system and other socialist economies, is unstable then long term. So he says economic considerations will ultimately prevail among North Koreans, facing Kim to face the difficult choices either he's going to have to continue to liberalize and make reforms because the people will be a little, they're upset. Things are not as organized as it has been, or he may have to repress more repression against his people. So, what do you think? Is that an assessment that you would agree with? And do you think that this inflation system is contributing to that kind of historical trend that forces the socialist economies one way or the other?
Yeah, I know Professor Kim, Dr. Kim, very well, and his background is his PhD was on transition in Russia. He's expert on Russian economy and what went through there. So a lot of this book is a great book in talking about how the old system worked. In terms of his projections, we've all sort of, well, not all of us, but a lot of people have projected North Korea to be a failed state or a failing state. And it keeps surprising people how it keeps surviving.
Hmm.
I argue a couple things differently, maybe not differently, but because he would probably agree with me. Um, they have uh, sort of the China model that they could look at that could dig them out of a lot of this trouble. The China model is basically privatization. So the state, if you think about it, owns the whole dadgum country, property, factories, everything that's their system. China, that was China's system until 78. Deng Xiaoping changed it forever, I think, by starting to allow private ownership of farms to begin with, most importantly. But then it took it gradually on and on. So now China to me is a mostly capitalist country. People own capital and they trade capital. That's the definition of capitalism. There's a very strong state component to China that I think makes them not as productive as they should be. And it pushes money in the wrong directions, but that's sort of a whole other matter. But North Korea could do that, and it's been kind of a mystery why it hasn't, why they don't sell property and refurbish their budget problem, raise salaries by selling property, liquidating, but they've done a little bit of that. And I'm thinking right now that's got to be high on their priority list of doing that. Let's privatize. You can use the term decentralized. That would be part of it. Decentralizing from this central, allowing people to do their own things. I think that's
You
happening inevitably. And it's a threat to the state because of the corruption. So I think if Kim doesn't do that, he's in big trouble. Yeah, I would agree with Kim Jong-un on that score.
So we had a question from the chat here from Matthew is asking, do you think that the North Korean leaders truly believe in their state-sponsored socialist or a communist ideology? Or is it really just a facade? And especially the economic side of the Marxist-Leninist theory. Do you think they really believe in it? Or is they just putting a show?
Well, no, I think they probably believe it, but they're adjusting it. The speech that Kim gave in 2015, it's so amazing because it so sounds like capitalism. But he's not equating, and most people don't. They really don't understand our two very different systems. Even most Americans don't understand. I'll just talk about socialism. Well, what do you mean by social? What do you mean by capital? You really mean if you're anti-capitalist, does that mean you don't own capital? You know what? It's just great, kind of crazy. But this speech sounds very sort of. We've got to let people own their capital, own their banks, own their finance, and invest it in the bank. And then the bank, which is centrally governed, owned by the state, basically, then lends that money out to whatever he wants. So you see, the device is pull in private savings, but let us, the government, decide where it's going to go.
Okay.
And we see that going on here too. I think very disturbingly, to tell you the truth, where our government will take savings and invest in Well, what everybody likes, semiconductors. Man, all these battery companies. Well, I guess we all like lithium batteries, but can't anyway, you could go on and on and on, but it's sort of the same process of the government people, the central planners, they think they know what's best.
So you
And
don't so
yeah.
you don't think that there's going to be any kind of destabilization because of this
Oh,
fluctuation? Is it going to offer some opportunities for reform in
oh
Korea?
no, I think there's a lot because what's happening now, I think, is budgets. I don't know how they're going to pay all these teachers 10 times more than they did last year. Uh,
Okay.
it'll be their budget speech comes out, I think, in February, about that's to their legislature. That'll come out in a couple of months.
Okay.
They'll finagle it. They won't give any numbers, but I think right now they're consternating over the budget,
Okay.
how they're going to pay all these higher wages, and it's going to cause trouble.
Well, I can't believe that we've gone through nearly an hour talking on this subject. So I wanted to give you a chance to kind of wrap up. And we had a question from Tyler in the chat here asking, what advice do you think you would give to like the Trump um, administration now and to how they should relate to North Korea and especially around the policies that they're going to put in place in order to deal with it, and how does this economic situation affect what you would say?
Yeah, that's so I liked the summits, the Trump summits back whenever they were 5, 6 years ago. They didn't work, but I still like the idea, and I would argue try again. Um, but don't try from a position of weakness, which is what the analysts are saying. Don't say Kim Jong-un is in a power position. He's not. I think he's in a very critical, difficult position, and it's all about the economy. So
Mm,
how, if we can approach him on the economic issues, but in a very smart way, not in terms of giving him money. That's the worst thing. You give him money, then he doesn't have to reform. It's kind of a tough love kind of thing. But they know that, they're smart. And it seems like there might be some opportunity here for Trump to engage North Korea, try again, but with a different set of, maybe a little more openness. Somebody mentioned, I think one of y'all mentioned tourism. So we sanction tourism. We don't allow Americans to go to North Korea. Why? Why don't we want, I don't particularly want to go, but a lot of Korean Americans would like to go. Why not? Well, it gives them money for their nukes. Well, it's such a small amount and it's sort of totally different issue. Um, I would argue that any activity in North Korea needs to be what I would call ILO approved, the International Labor Organization. They have like 10 rules. One
mm,
big rule is you got to pay people money.
mm,
So if you're hiring a North Korean, if you're traveling there, whatever, you pay them money. You don't pay through the government, right? Pay them directly. Tips, yes, give them tips. Um, but that would be hotels, whatever, maybe there could be some deals building hotels, Trump Hotel in Pyongyang, who knows? But the whole deal needs to be self-sustaining. And to be self-sustaining, it means not aid. Aid is not self-sustaining.
mm.
They have to earn, both sides need to make it worthwhile. So
Right.
very carefully done program to maybe ease a little bit the sanctions, not all of them. I generally like the sanctions, but you could ease them a little bit, make some headway, I think, with Kim. But take the position that you're in trouble, Mr. Kim. Uh, uh, we're not going to save you. We can help you out, but mostly, Mr. Kim, Chairman Kim, you can help yourself out.
So perhaps
And
some initial trade uh, engagement with them to open up gradually and see how things go.
The problem is this has been tried so many times before. I don't think
Yeah.
it's been tried quite correctly.
And
Um,
finally, before we close, any thoughts on the current instability and what's going on in South Korea and how that's affecting everything?
well, it's such a travesty, I think. I don't mean that their system, their constitution is is it needs some work, I think, because all their presidents that I can remember, every one of them have, they last 5 years and then they're put in jail, basically.
It seems to be a
Or one
pattern.
of them
Yes,
killed
it's true.
himself. It's just they don't have a good system for their presidency. The
Right.
democracy works pretty well, except for that. And the legislature. One thing I used to work in South. I was with the U.S. Embassy in Korea. My boss there said, problem with Korean democracy is it's black and white. It's lumpy. So there's two parties and they're out to get each other, and there's no consensus. There's no. Well, it looks like Washington, to tell you the truth. So it's a huge problem there. I don't have an answer to that one.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Bill. This has been very interesting and informative, and I hope that things work out and that we do see some progress in North Korea opening up and perhaps becoming a better part of the world community.
Yeah, if anybody wants to ask, I see there's some questions. Anybody wants to ask further questions, you can send it to me on my website. It's NAEIA.com. North Asia Economics Intelligence Advisory, NAEIA.com. You send a message there, I can respond pretty quickly to your questions.
Thank you. And if you didn't get that, you can always email me through the emails
Yeah.
that you got, and then I'll pass it on to Bill for you.
And try to take a look at this KEI blog. Probably in about a week, it'll have this little article. And there's a lot of other articles I've written there
Right.
too.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We will have a program again next week on a different subject, so please join us for our next program. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Bye all.